to a Spark Live event. My name is Marianne Moser, CEO of Calgary Science Centre, which operates as TELUS Spark. We have a hit list of superstars, each in their own way, lined up for you this morning, and a surprise announcement at the end, which happens to include ways to win almost $500 in prizes. The Science Centre is programming online these days because, well, we're closed, and the only visitor to the Science Centre right now is the famous wild turkey of Ramsey, fondly known as Turk Diggler. Everyone who knows Calgary knows that the Science Centre is just past the zoo. So this triggers the old joke. Why did the turkey pass the zoo? To get to the science side. Sorry, I know that's super lame. But I couldn't resist a good chicken crossing the road joke. Everyone wants to be on the side of science these days. It's safer here. And science is telling us that we need to stay apart. But as a species, our mental health is linked to coming together. Scientists have determined that loneliness is as hard on your health as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. So we have to stay connected. And that's what today is all about. Do we stay in touch and connect socially and emotionally while maintaining physical distance? Yes, we can. We could be in this for a good year or two, so let's get creative. The Science Centre is physically located, when it's opened, on a plot of land that has been connecting people for thousands of years. It lies in a valley that leads to the convergence of the Bow and the Elbow rivers, and it's on the traditional territories of the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. Treaty 7 was signed in 1877 by members of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, the Ayara Stoney Nakoda First Nations, alongside the Government of Canada. We are all treaty people. Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. We're grateful to these communities who have been caretakers and stewards of the land for thousands of years. While we cannot gather physically right now, as people have done forever, we can look forward to coming together in spirit, peacefully and with respect for each other and the beautiful planet we share, which we have apparently pushed past the limit right now. This planet is a wondrous phenomenon, and in the hands of a gifted storyteller is one of the greatest adventure stories on earth. Joining us here today to lead this show is a master science storyteller. Torah Kachur is the syndicated science columnist for CBC Radio 1. I met Torah when she was just finished her PhD in molecular genetics at the University of Alberta. We spent 2 weeks together at the Banff Science Communications program almost 15 years ago. I have watched her career take off through her gutsy and dedicated pursuit of excellence since then. She is another example of what leadership looks like. Over to you, Torah.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you very much. All right, everyone, we're here today to share some adventure stories. And the adventurer that you're going to meet right now is incredible. She's a very ambitious young woman. She's about manifesting your wildest dreams, about achieving things that you never expected that you could do, and doing them all in one person. So Dr. Shawna Pandya will share her stories of space exploration. She's also an aquanaut. She has focused on elevating others and helping others because she's an MD as well, and has learned to mentor, to trust each other, and to work together, especially when it comes to her space exploration. So we'll start with tales of passion, of mentorship from Dr. Shawna Pandya, and then we will have a question session after. So please fire up your questions. They will come to us in about half an hour, and we will be able to ask them from Dr. Shawna. So I want to welcome Dr. Shawna to everybody and introduce her here and start asking a few questions. So Shawna, I want to ask from you. I want you to, because there's lots of acronyms in your bio. If I read it out, there's MSc, I got that one, MD, I understand that one, CFPC, DMT, FAWM. So if you could just take me through maybe 3 of those, or 3 of the sort of major accomplishments you think define you.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for having me on this wonderful event. I am so excited to be here and so excited to discuss and see what questions roll in. So yeah, I can explain a lot of those acronyms, but coming back to your bigger question, when I talk about the accomplishments that I'm most proud of, I wouldn't put them all in letters behind my name. I think it's probably the lessons I've learned, the adventures I've had, becoming an aquanaut, and some of the teams I've formed along the way. But to answer your questions, to explain some of those acronyms, so when you're a doctor, when you graduate med school, you become an MD, but then you have to go specialize. So a lot of those letters just refer to specializations. So CCFP refers to the Canadian College of Family Physicians, DMT and FAWM, which we can talk about more, refer to my passion for extreme environments. As they pertain to medicine. So DMT refers to dive medical technician. That's where I got some training in dive medicine at the Aquarius Reef Base, which is one of the world's only undersea research laboratories. And FAWM, I'm a candidate in the fellow of Academy, as a fellow of the Academy of Wilderness Medicine. So I'm working on becoming a fellow in wilderness and extreme medicine.
So that's your medical stuff. So then let's go to all of the other things you managed to do in addition to being a doctor. So take me through some of those other, maybe 3 things you think that titles that define you.
Yeah, I would say adventurer, explorer, and then I'm going to make up a title, but I think it's apt pusher of limits, because everything I do, I'm just so excited. I'm pushing the boundaries further. So as pusher of limits, one of the titles and one of the accomplishments that I'm most proud of is that of aquanaut. So I do a lot of science in extreme environments. And so when we talk about an extreme environment, we talk about an area that's perhaps isolated, confined, without the usual creature comforts of home, which I think there's a lot of lessons that we can talk about from those environments that might pertain to being isolated during a pandemic. So last year, at the end of 2019, I went on my first ever underwater mission in a dive saturation complex at the Jules Undersea Lodge in the Florida Keys. And the designation of aquanaut comes from spending 24 hours in saturation. So when you're breathing the same air pressure as the pressure of the water around you. So we're actually in a small habitat. So we're breathing air, but it's compressed air. So that's where, because we spent 5 days there, that's how I became an aquanaut.
What does that feel like?
I think the smile on my face says it all. It was amazing. So that mission was called Neptune. And like many other things that we've talked about, it's an acronym. It stands for Nautical Experiments in Physiology, Technology, and Underwater Exploration. And I worked with a crew of 4 others who were just amazing people. They're like family. We conceived of the mission, we did the science, we proposed the science, went through the review, performed the science all together. We're just writing it up now. And really, when you're working that hard with equally talented people, my colleagues are American and Canadian, they become like family. And, we still message, we still talk to each other all the time. And I would say that that's, one of the biggest aspects that I took away from that mission.
What's swimming behind you in these pictures?
Yeah, so these are photos from my time. So this is during my DMT, my dive medical technician training. So the 2 underwater research facilities and research complexes that I mentioned, they're both in the Florida Keys. They're 13 miles from each other. So this was, that photo on the right side with me sitting is at the Aquarius Reef Base Underwater Research Lab. It's where NASA runs its NEMO, or NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operations missions. And so on that left side, I'm in what we call a Kirby Morgan helmet. So it's quite heavy, actually. So I'm actually in a dive tank. So those are actually not real fish. They're painted on. Yeah, but they look real. But the cool part of that is when you're actually underwater in the habitat, you see schools of fish, you see Goliath groupers that are 400 to 600 pounds swim by you, but they're looking in at you. So you're actually like the fish in the aquarium in that scenario. And it's really an odd feeling.
Okay, so let's get a little bit to your space ambitions, because they're there too. I can see you're in your flight suit.
Yes.
It's like an adult onesie. So tell me about, so now let's do this, some of sort of maybe 3 things that you're looking to accomplish, and probably one of them, I'm guessing, is space.
Yes. Yeah. I so my journey into space has been a lifelong one. Like most kids growing up, I wanted to be an astronaut, and I just never grew out of that ambition. And then I learned along the way, you can actually make space as part of your career. And so coming back to your question, getting to space would obviously be an amazing goal that I'd like to achieve. But also marrying my passions for space and medicine and making a lasting contribution to space medicine, especially as we as a species talk about going further than we ever have before for longer than we have before. You know, NASA is talking about going forward to the moon, putting the first woman on the moon, going to the moon to stay. And so there's a lot of medicine that actually comes with that, because at the end of the day, space is a hostile environment, and one could argue that space is trying to kill you. So you know, there's reduced gravity, there's radiation, our bones and our muscles don't do well in a reduced gravity environment. So if I can make a lasting contribution to how to keep people healthy in long duration space flight, as we eye the moon, as we eye Mars and beyond, that would also be something that I'm really, really keen on. And then just helping others who are interested in this career, who are interested in space, helping draw them up to be contributors, because at the end of the day, there's space for all of us, and space needs all of us.
What kind of questions are you trying to answer?
Sure, those are great questions. So the thing about space is that we're still finding new discoveries about how the human body reacts to space all the time. You know, there's this famous twin experiment where Scott and Mark Kelly, the astronaut twins, one of them, Commander Kelly, spent a year in space, and he had the advantage of having an identical twin. So the question is, how does his body change in terms of his blood work, his cognition, behavior, his genetics, after spending a year in space? And so the data from that is still coming in. We found that telomeres, the little ends of our DNA that kind of are a determinant of aging, grew longer in space, and we don't know why that is. You know, at the end of last year, we found that one of the astronauts on the space station developed a blood clot in one of their major neck veins, which is, we didn't know that was a thing before. So there's all of these questions about that we're still finding about things that can happen to you in space. And then there's things that are well known. We know that our muscles decompensate because there's no gravity to resist against. We know that our bones demineralize, almost like getting osteoporosis on Earth, because there's no gravity to weight load them, to resist against. So there's questions that are emerging, and then there's known hazards of spaceflight about how we keep ourselves healthy in a reduced gravity environment. And then I think the biggest question is, how much gravity is enough gravity? So on Earth, all of us, every single man, woman, child, all 7 billion of us have had the luxury of growing up in a 1G or 1 gravity environment. That's true of any species that has ever existed on this planet, whether you're talking about dinosaurs or dolphins. So we know on the flip side, on the International Space Station, when you're in 0 gravity, we obviously experience all these adverse effects. So the question is, if you're in 1/3 gravity on Mars or 1/6 gravity on the moon, is that enough? And if not, what is the bare minimum of gravity? For how long and at what frequency do we need that to stay healthy?
So this is you experiencing 0 gravity.
Yeah, and actually,
how much fun is that?
I think it's impossible to wear a spacesuit and not have a big grin on your face. You know, we did it for science. We did it in, as you can see in the photos, to test this spacesuit, which we call an IVA, or intravehicular activity spacesuit. But the cool part about this is you can actually experience 0 gravity, or what we formally call microgravity, without ever leaving the confines of the Earth. So in these photos, we're flying on a plane that is actually flies lower than a commercial jet. And simply by flying in what we call a parabola, or if you just kind of watch my hand, you go up and down. And so you accelerate, creating double the gravity we experience normally, and then you level out. So you're falling at the same rate of the plane. So if you think about it, when you're on a roller coaster, just as you overcome the arch of the roller coaster, you're weightless for a second, your stomach kind of lifts up. We do that on a plane, except we extend that out for 20 to 30 seconds, and that gives us enough time to test whatever we're trying to test. And then we do that for a repeated sequence of parabolas, so 15 to 30, and then that gives us the time to get the data we need. But it's a lot of fun.
So you are slowly, definitely becoming a hero of mine in the last 15 minutes. So I do want to ask about this idea of being a mentor. I mean, a lot of our audience is younger girls, girls that hopefully interested in science and following paths that are their passion. How did you stumble on your passion? How did you find role models? And do you see yourself as one?
Wow. Okay, that's a lot of questions. Those are a lot of great questions. We'll start with the last one. So when I started out to do this, I never ever intended to become a role model. I never saw myself becoming a role model. And then I recognized the importance of having, people to model what can be done. So you can springboard off that to do that yourself, and then springboard even further. And so, for example, growing up, Dr. Roberta Bondar, the first female Canadian in space, was a huge hero of mine. She, she's so I looked at her life and I thought, okay, she's female, I'm female. She's Canadian, I'm Canadian. Check. She's a girl guide, I'm a girl guide. So all I need to do is become a physician, a neuroscientist, or neuro-ophthalmologist, and then an astronaut, and then check, check, check.
Easy.
Yeah, that's in my mind. That representation really mattered. And then I didn't realize the importance of myself being that role model for others until I was giving a talk to undergraduate women in STEM. And one woman came up to me afterwards and she said, seeing someone of that same background as me makes me realize that I can do that. And so that really underscored to me how much role models, how much diversity, how much representation matters. And then the other part of it is, how do we draw people up? Why is mentorship important? And the thing is, I think most of us don't realize it, but regardless of what career stage we're at, someone is looking up to us. Even if you're in grade school right now and you're in grade 12, realize that one of the grade 10s looks up to you because you're doing everything that they want to do when they get to grade 12, whether it's applying for scholarships, running student council, being on the senior team. Someone looks up to you. And so at every stage of life, we all, including myself, have people we look up to and try to aspire to be. And then we have people who are watching us and for whom we model good behavior. And I think what really underscored that story for me, that lesson for me, is I was lucky enough to be sponsored by the Canadian Space Agency to do an elective in aerospace medicine at NASA Johnson Space Center. This was when I was in medical school. This was back in 2012. And when we were briefing to go down there, what they said to us is, oh yeah, and by the way, we'll try to get the Canadian astronauts who are training down there to come liaise with you. And you take a step back and you say, that's very nice of you to say, but I'm a medical student. These are busy people. They have better things to do. And then my first day there, when I'm getting into my office, I get a phone call and I say, hang on for a second. I lost my passport, so I need to find it. And then I said, wait, he said his name was Colonel Chris Hadfield. I probably should put him on hold. And this was when Colonel Hadfield was training to be commander of the International Space Station. Like, he was 6 months out from his flight. So it's not like he didn't have things to do. But himself, David Saint-Jacques, Jeremy Hansen, they all made the effort to meet with myself and the other medical student, to liaise with us. And they didn't have to. And, that just stuck with me so much because, they realized they really took that role as a mentor and, they invested time that they maybe didn't have. And for me, that's just a big lesson to pay it forward. And that's why I always try to pay it forward.
Well, you're giving us your time right now. And we have a question from Paige. She's 8 years old and she loves space. And she wants to know how old you were when you wanted to be an astronaut.
I was about the same age, actually, maybe 8 or 9 years old. My parents will tell you I would bring home every astronomy book, any news about space. I would read as much as I could. We would always go camping and see the most beautiful night skies as a family, and the stars would just leap out, to us. And that's really when the passion grew.
You also have a passion for martial arts. And so Melanie on YouTube wants to hear about that.
Yeah, so I am a second degree black belt in Taekwondo. I've been lucky enough to compete at nationals. I've competed at the world level. And then I've also picked up Muay Thai. I've gone to Thailand to train in fight camps. I once fought an amateur fight there just on a whim. It was lucky.
How'd you do?
Yeah, I won. So that was fun. I would do it again. And martial arts is just another great community of people. It's like a family that you can keep coming back to. So I think maybe the running thread here in everything that I do is having great people and great teams to build you up and help become your best, realize your best potential.
So what scares you?
So this is a great story. I never used to think I was afraid of anything. Like I wasn't afraid of heights. That's fine until I went to get my solo skydiving license. And on my first jump, I was hanging outside the plane at 14,000 feet, and I realized I wasn't afraid of heights. I realized I was afraid of jumping from heights.
I
Which
think
was,
that's very, very healthy.
that was quite the realization to come to, you know, in that particular situation. And so it's sort of like, okay, what do I do now? And that was a really important lesson about fear, because it's sort of like, okay, you can approach fear in a rational way, even when you feel like your heart is hammering in your chest. And so for me, it took rationalization, just looking at the people around me, like they were happy, they were smiling. Obviously, they'd made it back from their first jump. And then, you know, dissecting, like, what's the next step? You know, where do I go from here? And for me, that was just sort of to bounce and let go from the plane. And of course, know your training, knowing your backup. But I would think that's a very good example of what scares me.
Do you think that your martial arts training was the sort of part of your becoming what you are today, you know, with that sort of facing that calmness, that rationalization, that moment?
Absolutely. So there's so martial arts isn't just physical. There's a lot of, you know, it talked about the community, but there's also the mental aspect of training. And so in Taekwondo, there's 5 core tenets that we just embrace, and every single one of us, whether we're white belt or, you know, 5th degree black belt, embrace that tenet. And they're courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, indomitable spirit. And so briefly, it just means, you know, having that will to continue on, even, you know, even if you get knocked down, bounce back up, but also, you know, realize at the end of the day, everyone is, you know, your colleague and your peer and, you know, part of your team.
We are kind of already getting to questions, but if anyone does have questions, please keep sending them in. We have Amy who's asked my question as well. She's taking it out of my mouth. How do you find time to do everything?
Oh gosh, yeah. So I think there's a couple answers to this. The short answer is checklists run my life. You know, I like to say there's a season for everything. You know, it's just because I'm a skydiver, martial artist, physician, citizen scientist, astronaut candidate, like I'm not doing all of those things in the same day. It's not like I'm, you know, delivering a baby and then jumping from a plane and then landing in a pool and diving and then just coming home. It's like there's a time and place for everything. So even if you're a star athlete and you're a soccer player, volleyball player, badminton, volleyball, basketball player, you're not doing all of those things at the same time. So figure out what your priorities are, and then figure out what needs to be done today for today to be a good day. And that's kind of how I approach getting things done, despite doing a lot of different things.
I mean, you sound pretty jazzed for sure, and I think rightfully so about your aquanaut designation. But Adrian, who's 7, wonders what your favorite job or role has been and why.
I think anytime that I've had the opportunity to work in close teams of really, really driven, smart, talented people. So definitely the aquanaut mission was like that. But even in the scientist astronaut candidate worlds, like just these people, they're so bright. You know, they become like family, and you would do anything to help them succeed and also help the mission succeed. So the citizen scientist astronaut gig's a pretty good one as well.
All right, let's just see what else we've got going on here. Okay, Hadia wonders, she wants some tips on how to master things.
Master things. Yeah, so there's actually science around this. So we spoke about resilience, and there's science around resilience, but there's also science around practice as well. And there's a great book, it's called Grit. It's by a psychologist called Angela Duckworth, who researches you know, grit, resilience, and also achieving. And she found there's a way to practice. So first of all, you have to practice. You have to like what you're practicing, and then you have to practice with intent. So say you're playing the piano, it's not enough to just sit at the piano and practice the same piece over and over. Maybe there's a specific measure that you want to memorize. Maybe you want to get the finger sequence correctly. Maybe you want to get the melody, like the melodiousness correctly. So every time you practice something, whether it's a sport, whether you're studying something, practice with intent. What is your goal by the end of that practice or study session? And that's the way you know, science shows us, and that's the way I practice best.
So Graham asks, what things or experiences can I have as a kid to help me become an astronaut?
Oh gosh, yeah. So that's a great question. So when you are growing up, there's still lots of opportunities. And I would say taking a step back and looking at the mentality that makes an astronaut. And from my experience, being curious and then, asking questions and seeking to learn about a whole lot of things, whether it's science, or just picking up new skills. But astronauts tend to be great communicators. They tend to know how to fix things. So learning to be very handy, and then also learning to be a good teammate, which you can practice in everyday life, even as your family, as a family member. You can view your family as a crew and say, how can I be the best possible teammate to my
Maybe
family?
do your chores and clean your room, Graham. That would help. No.
Hopefully his mom approves of that answer.
And so Pamela asks, what would you say has inspired you the most in your life to achieve that success that you've had?
Oh gosh. There's so much. So people is the short answer. And there's people to look up to and, externally, like I've talked about some of the astronauts, the Canadian astronauts I look up to. I've talked about the teammates, that I've worked with, but also I can't stress enough, my family. My parents have done so much for me and my brother. Their story's amazing. They packed up everything they had in a couple of bags when in their early 20s, and then they moved from India to Canada to start a brand new life, and they had no relatives here. So I think that really has been powerful for me and very inspiring for me, because that's not an easy thing to do, and I'm really really grateful for the springboard it was for me. So
Curtis asks, so how did you find the courage to not leave your career, but just jump into something so different and so crazy from this path that was medical school, which is hard enough?
yeah, that's a great question. So I think coming into every new thing that you do with humility, there's often this sense that, oh, this person has done this and this and this, so they're naturally going to be good at everything, and that's not the case. If you are good in something, like if you're a star basketball player and you start to play volleyball, maybe you have certain aspects that may predispose you to being a good volleyball player, but you still need to learn the rules of the game. You still need to learn what makes a good volleyball player. So coming back to my own life, even if I've gone from medicine to space, realizing that, there needs to be an element of humility, that I have a lot to learn, and then just seeking to start at step zero and work my way up, I think is the best way that's worked for me.
Shafana asks, what are your tips to overcoming those obstacles that you have faced and clearly overcome?
Yeah, sure. So I think, when you just facing obstacles, realizing that any obstacle, so it's a matter of reframing. You can view something as an obstacle, or you can view it as an opportunity to grow and be better. So if you've had a situation in which you failed, I wouldn't view it as a failure, but I would view it as a learning opportunity, and then just take a very clinical approach and say, okay, what went wrong? How did it go wrong? Why did it go wrong? And how will I react? How can I change my own actions next time, so to make this better? Because every single one of us is going to deal with suboptimal circumstances. And then there's a way to take that and turn it into a lesson learned to do better the next time.
Well, Annabelle asks, then how have you learned to overcome that stressful situations and those failures?
Yeah, so with stress, I think also, it's a lot like fear. So I'd come back to that skydiving example. So, I wouldn't, I'll paint the picture for you. Like I'm sitting outside the plane, the air is like whipping past you at, 180 kilometers plus an hour. Your heart's hammering in your chest, you're really, really sweaty. And, you can have that emotional response, but you can actually still, despite being scared, you can also still take a step back and realize that even if your body is scared, your mind still works. And so if you're in a tough situation, you always, always, always have a split second to think, even if it's life or death in medicine, even if it's jumping out of a plane at 40,000 feet, you always have that split second to use your mind.
I think we'll almost wrap up here with just one more question. And how have you learned the importance of supporting others and people supporting you in your career so far?
Yeah, I think, I have been incredibly lucky, through medicine, through space, in my personal life, just having amazing, amazing people. And so that has taught me, to take a step back and, be grateful. So I think gratitude for what I have, and then saying, how can I use that gratitude to also spread that good fortune. So that would be how I approach it. And then also taking a step back and saying, okay, what is my ultimate goal? Like, what is my objective? How can I make things better for those around me? Just saying that simple question has really been instrumental in helping me try to help others.
Well, Dr. Shawna, thank you so much for joining us today. We are grateful for all the questions, and kids, keep them coming in. We will continue to explore all the kinds of things that make space amazing and people like Shawna amazing. So thank you, Dr. Shawna. We will go and switch gears now, and we are going to start talking to, there she is, Honorable Leela. Sharon Aheer is the Minister of Culture, Multiculturalism, and the Status of Women, and I might point out is also a stage performer, can definitely belt out a song. Now, I think what you need to recognize is that we have a politician who is so much more than a politician, and she's so much more bigger than that. And so I really want to thank you for joining us today, Leela, as we go by. So we are out in the community now. We are, of course, digitally, but we might find ourselves feeling a little bit less connected than normal. That's why we do things like this. So you've become quite a champion for community leadership, for mental health supports, and what's important to you right now?
Thank you very much, Dr. Kachur. And I have to say, I'm like fangirling a little bit over yourself. And
no, I'm fangirling about Dr. Pandya.
No, both of you. And I have to say, I hope Dr. Pandya is listening to this, because I think she's also a musician, and I'm not sure if she just plays piano or sings, but I'm going to just leave this hanging. Optimus Prime, Transformers, What I've Done. I think that we have to do this together sometime, because she's a huge Transformers fan, and I am too. So, and I have two grown sons. I have a 21 and a 23-year-old, well, almost 24, and literally lived through the Transformers era. And I was reading a little bit about her, and so I think that at some point in time, What I've Done, Lincoln Park, has to be done in collaboration with this group of incredible women.
I'm going to tap out on that one. I'm not musical at all. So it's you and Dr. Shawna. You guys can take it from there. Okay, so I have some 3 really quick questions for you. Well, rapid fire questions. So we heard from Dr. Pandya. She talked about staying focused on her career goals. Did you always imagine you'd have a career in politics?
Well, I think my parents could have probably told you that I was going to end up in that direction. I actually wanted to be a translator for the embassy in Canada, or to work like in the capacity of an ambassador or something like that. So, because I love languages and I'm a musician. So my entire life has been about learning languages, and especially when you sing art, song, and opera, it was all about the languages and how they sit in your mouth and roll around, and the beauty and the color of how language. And then I think that the most profound thing that I learned through that was that I didn't need to actually speak Italian well. It was about how it was that I learned phonetically how that language happened, and then how I translated that to my audience, that I truly understood the intention of the song, that I understood the syntax, the context of where that music was coming from, the era maybe that it was created, how it was probably somewhat transformative in the time that it was being created, because people, whether it's through faith or whether it was through music that was more secular, it really had meaning to those people at that time. So language, and also the way the language was written, sometimes it was written in a higher form or a lower form. It just had such huge impact. So those kinds of things really, really impacted my ability to communicate. And so I think it really also, anybody who's been in any competitive environment, you know this, so does Dr. Pandya, it really, really trains you for a life of what I'm in now, which is politics.
Absolutely.
Because there's no harder form of critique than when it comes around your body, mind, and soul, and the color of your voice that comes out of you. If you can take that, and you can take that as constructive criticism and improve your tone, your color, all these things, any criticism or constructive information that comes my way as a politician, it leaves me a lot more open and understanding to how I can be better and better serve the people that I'm so blessed to be able to represent.
Well, so what role, I guess, did community play in your own personal growth?
Yeah, so actually I have, I need to give a shout out to a very dear friend of mine. Her name's Tanya Druso. I grew up in Chestermere, so I was one of the few people of color actually in that area. My dad is this beautiful color of chocolate. That's another thing that Dr. Pandya and I share. My dad is from Southeast Asia. He's from Andhra Pradesh. And so my dad was a real, like in terms of what he looked like, and he was a chemical engineer, he was a real outlier. In terms of the small rural community that I grew up in, and building community around that. My mom and dad, my mom is Caucasian, she's Irish, English, Scottish, and Scandinavian, so I'm confused at the best of times. But my mom was an only child. My dad came from a family of 11, so my mom really picked up on the Southeast Asian family and way of life, taught me how to put on saris, taught me everything about Southeast Asian culture, and then also learned to cook the food. So instead of inviting people over for like burgers and barbecues, we invited them over for dosa, and we invited them over for curry chicken or, you know, vegetable sabjia and stuff like that. So it became sort of the hub of this cultural festive, you know, environment. Like we would celebrate things like Diwali and Christmas. And then my dad, who came to Canada in 1963 as a very young engineer, really embraced Canadian culture. And so my love of Christmas, you know, in the really the most, I suppose, materialistic way possible, like the Christmas trees and Santa and all of that came from my father, you know? And so and then through that, we built this amazing community. And I don't know, the sense of belonging and being able to help and build community. And we've seen it in Alberta. Alberta is unbelievably resilient. You know, we're into COVID right now, but if you see the incredible gifts of kindness, everyday Albertans, we have a program going on right now for the Northern Lights Volunteer Program. We have like 460 people that have been nominated in just over a week of just unbelievable kindnesses. And this young girl that I was referring to, Tanya Druso, who I grew up with, her mom was such a huge mentor to me. I think I thought I was Italian when I was little as a result. But, you know, like we would all go over and punch the bread at her house and then come back and have East Indian food at my house. And then her mom, you know, just embraced me like one of her own. And so that combined with new families coming into the communities all the time and sharing that food and festival and family, it was so important. And my children and my husband, as a result, are huge volunteers in their communities. We help out with as much as we can because it's just been such an unbelievable gift getting to know people, and especially in this job, right? This passion that we have in what we do as you know, politicians really, I think, stems for a lot of us from our volunteerism on the ground.
Well, I mean, you are the Minister of Culture, Multiculturalism, and the Status of Women. So I do want to ask you right now, how do we maintain a sense of culture, a sense of identity, a sense of awareness in what's going on when we're in these times like this, that when we're expecting at least another couple weeks, if not more, of this kind of very distant, we're not having folk festivals and all those kinds of things that really establish us as a cultural hub. So what do we do now and defining ourselves as Albertans?
Yeah, what we're living through right now, and I know we hear this word all the time, unprecedented, but I don't really know what other word we could possibly use to describe this, but doing things like this, like the Yes You Can, and meeting people like yourself and Dr. Pandya and, you know, and all of the other, you know, Jasmine and Dr. Moser and everybody who's involved with this, these little communities that we're building here online are imperative, not only to building those new communities, because I don't know about you, but I'm a massive hugger. Like that's my, that's my form of communication. And so it's so traumatic to not reach out and just embrace people. And I swear to God, if I ever meet you, I will give you the most awkward, ugly hug you'll ever see. And it'll just be because I just feel the need to, you know, bring people into that. And I think, you know, these abilities to meet for coffees and have cultural events. And I don't know if you know who Erica Weeb is. We announced her as, right? She's this Olympic world champion wrestler, amazing woman that is just the most inspiring human I've ever met. And she's our Sport and Active Living ambassador. And she talks about control in times when you don't have control. And so this is about finding those anchoring situations that we can use and control in these crazy times. So for example, in culture and music, like what we've done is that what we wanted to do is bring culture into the legislature. This is your house. The legislature is your house. The federal building is your house. McDougall is your house. So many new Canadians and families that have come here, and even people who've lived here for generations, have never been to their house. And so what we did is we flung open the doors initially to have cultural events here, and just invited cultural leaders and people and communities and dancing and singing. And then all of a sudden COVID happened, and we had all of these people wanting to celebrate, like, and I'm sure Dr. Pandya can relate to this. Vaisakhi just went by. Vaisakhi is like 40,000 members of the Sikh community in the middle of the streets doing the Nagar Kirtan and singing, and you know, and right now we're in Ramadan. The Muslim communities cannot gather for dinners with their families, and Eid is coming up, you know. We have all of these community events and these faith organizations all finding new ways to be together. So what we did is we started cultural events online. So we did Vaisakhi online. We had Gujarat Day recognition online. We're going to be doing Eid online, and bringing our communities together to the best of our ability to celebrate, so that when we do get to see each other in person again, so it makes me very emotional, but our ability to be in each other's presence will hopefully be unlike anything we've ever expressed and felt before. And that I don't think people ever take for granted the privilege that we have of being in each other's presence. But I really hope that we fully understand what it means to actually be able to gather and come together. So we want to keep making sure that that's happening, that we're, you know, we have a charitable donations program right now to help charities that are on the ground working with COVID crisis. Isolation is huge. We're in Sexual Assault Awareness Month right now. What we're really concerned about is the aftermath of this, and what we're going to be looking at: mental health, what kind of situations are happening. You know, we have the mandate of stay home, stay safe. What if it's not safe for you to stay home? What if that's not your safe place? What are we doing to make sure that, you know, are we going to see increases in child abuse and elder abuse and domestic violence and sexual assault? All of these things, yourself, you in your community are a nerve center. Dr. Pandya is a nerve center. All the nerve centers and the synaptic, we are the things that bridge those gaps to make sure that those supports are there, and that we understand, suicide rates, all of these things. We have to talk about it. We have to shine bright lights on them, have conversations about it all the time, find out in partnership with government what we can do to help, and make sure that we're all there for each other. But this community that you're helping to build, that TELUS is helping build, that everybody, this will hopefully have long lasting fingers into our future, so that isolation maybe is one of the things we can take off of the docket of what happens to people and how they find themselves in these situations. So I'm hoping that the innovations and incredible things that we've learned from this will actually elevate our ability to be able to really help people. So sorry, really long-winded answer.
No, but we have a challenge, don't we?
Yeah. So
that fits. This all fits.
Yeah. And I guess that's why I'm so excited. Part of the reason to be here today is, on that note, is yes, I can connect community design challenge. So, and why is because social distance cannot mean social isolation. And as I look around every single day, honestly, Tara, we're so inspired by the acts of community service that we see. And although we might not be able to visit our friend down the street or hug them, our grandparents, or even be able to gather on the soccer field, what we can do is create new and innovative ways to put smiles on people's faces and take care of our friends and neighbors. So look inside and look at your ingenuity and how you build bridges and powerful teams and communities. And then what we're asking you to do is to tap into your inner inventor. Challenge yourself, my friends, at home. Put your creative skills to work and your science into your heart, and design and build a thingamajig or something with a simple purpose. And hopefully all of us will be able to create some really amazing connections in our communities. And there's some examples of what's it in your window, or a hello-atronic on your porch. My favorite one is this one. I've often thought about doing this one between my sister-in-law's house, because we share dishes all the time. And I'm always taking my laundry basket across her house. A crafty zip line that sends a care package from your house to your neighbors. Do you remember the old like laundry lines?
Could we
that
just
went
do
in
like,
between?
just do laundry? Can I just send my
Yeah.
laundry over and then they send it back clean?
I can't promise you it will be white, but yes, we throw all our colors in at the same time. But you know, we want to look at original ways of being able to reach out to somebody and how you can brighten their day. And that's it. You're all skill levels, thank God, because if I'm included in this, all skill levels need to be required and are welcome. And if you have the means of creating mechanical and electrical contraptions, have at her. I can't wait to see what that means. I know cardboard is also allowed. I'm great with cardboard and duct tape. I feel like I could build anything. Most of my costumes are made out of a glue gun, just saying. I'm a musical theater person. So, but it's all about the spirit of invention and connecting and supporting with those around you. And honestly, it's the idea that matters. And so the design challenges start today and run until March 15th. And all of the details can be found at sparkscience.ca. So I'm already thinking about what I'm going to do. I hope you're thinking about what you're going to do.
I've got some ideas.
You got some ideas, so start drafting your plans because Spark is cooking up some fantastic prizes. So let's get building. And now's the time to build connections, everybody. We just, it's never been more imperative, and let's show how strong we can be together. Yes, we can.
Leela, can you hear me? Leela.
Hello?
Hi, it's Marianne again.
Hi, Marianne.
This is brilliant. You know what? I think we have a chance of winning.
I think so. Thank you so much for sending me the can. The string's a little tight though. Can you like give me some slack?
You know what? I will, I'll get some technical people on this.
Awesome. Thank you. Love you. Bye. Peace out.
Thank you so much. Look, you know what? This has been a very inspiring hour. I want to thank Dr. Torah Kachur, Dr. Shawna Pandya, and the Honorable Minister Leela Aheer for helping us get inspired and start inventing. There's been a lot of fangirl stuff going on here, but I want, you know, this applies to every gender and every way you identify, she, he, or they. We need to get creative to stay together. I also want to thank our generous sponsor of this event, Nutanix, and you for taking part, for listening, and hopefully getting some ideas. As the minister mentioned, the contest closes on May 15th. So go to sparkscience.ca. You can submit your videos and photos online. There are prizes in 3 different categories. Happy inventing, stay connected, and we can't wait to share the results. All for now.